All of your public comments don't talk about meritocracy. They talk about liberal democratic efforts that are destroying the military, that those people are our enemies. That's not meritocracy. That's a political view. And your goal, as I see emerging, is to politicize the military in favor of your particular positions, which you've outlined extensively, which would be the worst blow to the professionalism of the United States military and would undercut readiness, undercut retention, because I can see officers receiving these emails beginning to wonder very seriously if they should continue. Let me change the subject for a moment.
The most
here.
dangerous threat to the United States military isn't foreign. It is the systematic, political radicalization of its own leadership. That became terrifyingly clear during a high-stakes standoff at the Senate Armed Services Committee between Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and veteran Senator Jack Reed. For decades, the American military has prided itself on being a fierce, apolitical institution where promotion is earned through merit, not ideological compliance. But today, Senator Reed pulled back the curtain on a deeply disturbing shadow operation occurring under Hegseth's watch, a targeted intimidation campaign designed to threaten, silence, and purge officers who refuse to bend the knee to a political agenda. If you want to see the exact moment the traditional professionalism of our armed forces collided with a ruthless political machine, you need to watch this.
Thank you. You're a very understanding chairman. I like that. I like that. Ms. Hegseth, you've written, and it's quote, "Oh yeah, and fire any general who hasn't carried water for Obama and Biden's extra-constitutional and agenda-driven transformation for our military. Clean house and start over." It's come to my attention that current serving military personnel have received emails threatening them with being fired for supporting the current DOD policies. One mail that was sent to a military officer with the subject line, "Clean house," reminiscent of your specific comment, states, and I quote, "With the incoming administration looking to remove disloyal, corrupt, traitorous, liberal officers such as yourself, we will certainly be putting your name into the list of those personnel to be removed. We know you support the woke DEI policies and will ensure you never again influence anyone in the future. You and the redacted spouse's name will be lucky if you're able to collect your military requirement," end quote. Now, I want to remind everyone that these policies that are being referred to date back decades, to the 1940s and 50s, with respect to racial discrimination particularly, and administrations of both parties, including the Trump administration and their first party, caused those policies to be enforced. Mr. Hegseth, are you aware of these emails being sent to officers?
Senator, you mentioned the word accountability, which is something we have not had for the last 4 years.
Are you aware of these messages being sent to officers?
Certainly I'm not aware of that. It's not one of my efforts, but there's been no accountability for the disaster of the withdrawal in Afghanistan. And that's precisely why we're here today.
Excuse me.
Is that leadership has been unwilling to take accountability. It's time to restore that to our most senior ranks.
You have written publicly that DI policy is a distraction and have military personnel walking on eggshells. Do you believe that emails like that are essentially threatening both a serving officer and a spouse and claiming that they'll lose their pension will have a distraction and detract from the lethality?
Senator, you mentioned the 40s and 50s, and you're precisely right. The military was a forerunner in courageous racial integration in ways no other institutions were willing to do. I served with men and women of all backgrounds because of the courage of people decades and decades ago. Incredibly important. However, the DEI policies of today are not the same as what happened back then. They're dividing troops inside formations, causing commanders to walk on eggshells, not putting meritocracy first. That's the indictment that's made by those serving right now.
Excuse me.
And why we're having this conversation.
All of your public comments don't talk about meritocracy. They talk about liberal democratic efforts that are destroying the military, that those people are our enemies. That's not meritocracy. That's a political view. And your goal, as I see emerging, is to politicize the military in favor of your particular positions, which you've outlined extensively, which would be the worst blow to the professionalism of the United States military and would undercut readiness, undercut retention, because I can see officers receiving these emails beginning to wonder very seriously if they should continue. Let me change subject for a moment here. You've been instrumental in securing pardons for several convicted war criminals. In at least two of these cases, the military personnel who served in combat with these convicted service members were not supportive of the pardons. They did their duty as soldiers to report war crimes. Your definition of lethality seems to embrace those people who do commit war crimes, rather than those who stand up and say, this is not right. So what's the response to your service members who personally witnessed these and courageously reported them to their superiors?
Senator, as someone who's led men in combat directly and had to make very difficult decisions, I've thought very deeply about the balance between legality and lethality, ensuring that the men and women on the front lines have the opportunity to destroy with and close the enemy, and that lawyers aren't the ones getting in the way. I'm not talking about disavowing the laws of war or the Geneva Conventions or the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Sir, I'm talking about restrictive rules of engagement that these men and women behind me understand they've lived with on the battlefield, which has made it more difficult to defeat our enemies. In many of the cases you're talking about in particular, sir, there was evidence withheld. There was prosecutorial misconduct. And as someone who looks case by case and defaults to the warfighter, to the men and women with dust on their boots, not the second guessers in air-conditioned offices in Washington, D.C.
Excuse me.
I look case by case and was proud to work with President Trump to understand those cases and ensure that our warriors are always looked out for.
Those cases were adjudicated by who? People in Washington or fellow non-commissioned officers who had also served, sacrificed, and believed in the ethic of the military? Who were the court-martial?
Senator, in multiple cases, they were actually acquitted, but charges lingered.
Yes,
regardless of where those convening authorities were, yes, sir.
Some were, but others were convicted, and you asked for pardon. That's the only reason you asked for pardon, because they were convicted. But the other factor, too, is you've already disparaged in writing the Geneva Convention, the rules of law, all of these things. How will you be able to effectively lead a military in which one of the principal elements is discipline, respect for lawful authority? You have made statements to your platoon after being briefed by a JAG officer. Well, by the way, would you explain what a JAG off is?
I don't think I need to, sir.
Why not?
Because the men and women watching understand.
Well, perhaps some of my colleagues don't understand.
It would be a JAG officer who puts his or her own priorities in front of the warfighters. Their promotions, their medals, in front of having the backs of those who are making the tough calls on the front lines.
Thank you, Senator Reid.
Interesting.
Thank you, Senator
Thank you
Reid.
very much.
Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr.
The confrontation began with a chilling revelation from Senator Reid. He confronted Hegseth with actual emails currently being sent to serving military personnel. The emails, bearing the subject line, "Clean House," a phrase popularized by Hegseth himself, explicitly threaten officers and their families. Reid read the terrifying words into the record. With the incoming administration looking to remove disloyal, corrupt, traitorous, liberal officers such as yourself, we will certainly be putting your name into the list. The email went so far as to target the officers' spouses and threaten the theft of their hard-earned military pensions. When pressed on whether he was aware of these systemic threats, Hegseth casually deflected, claiming he had no knowledge, before trying to pivot to the 2021 Afghanistan withdrawal. But Reid refused to let him escape. He pointed out that while Hegseth publicly claims he wants to eliminate distractions and restore a meritocracy, his actual writings and public statements do the exact opposite. Hegseth doesn't talk about merit. He frames fellow American service members as enemies, purely for upholding long-standing DoD policies on diversity and inclusion that date back to racial integration in the 1940s. Reid exposed the dark reality. This isn't a return to a merit-based system. It is a scorched earth campaign to politicize the Pentagon, a move that severely undercuts military readiness and forces top-tier talent to flee the ranks. The temperature in the room reached a boiling point when Reed shifted the focus to an even graver ethical failure. Hegseth's active role in securing pardons for convicted war criminals. Reed noted the profound betrayal of this policy, pointing out that the brave service members who did their duty and courageously reported these war crimes were completely abandoned by their own leadership. Hegseth's definition of lethality apparently embraces those who violate the laws of war while punishing those who stand up for military honor. Hegseth's defense was alarming. He claimed he defaults to the war fighter with dust on their boots, rather than second-guessers in air-conditioned offices, completely dismissive of the military's own judicial system. When Reed pushed him on his public disparagement of the Geneva Convention and the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Hegseth doubled down by taking a direct swipe at JAG, Judge Advocate General legal officers. When asked to define what he meant by his derogatory terms, Hegseth arrogantly stated that a JAG officer is someone who puts their own priorities, their promotions, their medals ahead of the troops on the front lines. It was a stunning, unprecedented public attack on the very legal framework that ensures the United States military operates with moral authority.